We've had a hands-on leak along with confirmation of a 120Hz display on the OnePlus 8 Pro, and I'll be sharing all the details right after this. If you're new here and want to stay up to date with the latest tech, please hit subscribe followed by the bell. So while the competition are making users choose between 120Hz or Quad HD Plus resolution, it seems that the OnePlus 8 Pro will be offering both. This was advised by Ice Universe and also confirmed in a hands-on photo of the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now of course, the OnePlus 8 Pro display is provided by Samsung, so many commented on my previous video saying that Samsung wouldn't provide a better display to OnePlus than they have on their own phones, but this isn't actually the case. Samsung displays are a separate company anyway, but the upcoming S20 has hardware capable of Quad HD Plus at 120Hz, but they're just not giving users the option. The difference with the OnePlus 8 Pro is that they are going to give users a choice. A new hands-on photo of the OnePlus 8 Pro has surfaced. Now this is most likely a pre-production unit, but it clearly shows us there's an option for 60, 90 or even 120Hz. This is great news as those more concerned with battery life can make decisions suited to them, but higher refresh rates isn't as harmful to battery life as some may want you to believe. The hands-on photo also confirms to us that the OnePlus 8 Pro has a single punch-hole camera in the top left. If you remember back to my previous videos, there were a few reports claiming it was gonna have two. Pete Lau, the OnePlus CEO, also took to Twitter last week to show the difference between a 60Hz display and the 120Hz on the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now this is of course better displayed in slow motion, as the average person will be watching on a 60Hz display anyway, meaning a view of 120Hz would still be at 60. The OnePlus 8 has received certification in India, and the OnePlus 8 Pro has already appeared on Geekbench. The benchmark for the OnePlus 8 Pro that surfaced showed the variant with 12GB of RAM paired with the Snapdragon 865. It received a single core score of 4,296 and a multi-core score of 12,531. Now of course these are early benchmarks, so we expect the final device to have higher scores when released. As well as this, we've had two leaked screen protectors for the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now while they don't really tell us anything new, I thought I'd still share them with you guys. They're simply renders, and the first one is of a design where the top left is cut out entirely. This is the first time I've seen something like this design, and I have to say it does look a bit odd. The second one covers the whole screen however, and many are speculating that this means we won't have a punch hole camera on the OnePlus 8 Pro. Realistically, it doesn't make a difference. Just because there's a camera there, it doesn't mean the screen protector needs to have a punch hole there as well. When it comes to the OnePlus 8 range this year, we're getting three variants, and we may also see the OnePlus Concept 1. If we start with the more affordable, the OnePlus 8 Lite. This is actually the first time OnePlus have ever delivered a Lite model, so it's going to be interesting to see how it performs in sales. On the front of the OnePlus 8 Lite, we've got a full screen display with a single punch hole camera. The display is going to be a Super AMOLED display coming in at 6.4 inches, and it's a Full HD Plus resolution of 1080 by 2400. It's going to have a 90Hz refresh rate along with an in-display fingerprint scanner. It's believed that the selfie camera on the OnePlus 8 Lite is going to be the 16MP Sony IMX471. When it comes to the rear, we've got a different camera arrangement on the OnePlus 8 Lite. It was initially thought that we'd get a dual camera setup on the device, but recent news and photos claim the OnePlus 8 Lite is going to have a triple camera setup. We get a 48MP Sony IMX586 with an aperture of f4.7, we get a 16MP ultra wide with an aperture of f2.2, and finally we get a 12MP telephoto lens with an aperture of f2.4. It's going to support both optical and electronic image stabilization. We've got the power button and the alert slider on the right hand side of the phone, with the volume buttons on the left, and the phone is of course powered by USB Type-C, and there's no 3.5mm headphone jack. While many were speculating that the OnePlus 8 Lite was going to be powered by the Snapdragon 765, the latest report claimed it's going to be using MediaTek's Dimensity 1000 system on chip, and this will be coupled with 8GB of RAM and a choice of 128 or 256 storage. The storage will of course be UFS 3 and the phone dimensions are reportedly going to be 159.2 by 74 by 8.6mm, making it smaller than the previous OnePlus 7. It's reportedly going to be powered by a 4000 mAh battery with support for 30-watt fast charging. The OnePlus 8 Lite comes in two variants and it's expected the 8GB of RAM with 128 storage is going to be $428 and the 8GB of RAM with 256 storage will be $472. Next up, we've got the standard OnePlus 8. When it comes to the standard OnePlus 8, we can see it looks very similar to the previous model, although this time they've decided to go with a punch hole camera instead of the notch we're used to seeing. For the first time ever, we'll be getting a curved display on the standard model of the OnePlus 8, and a news source claims that the OnePlus 8 is going to have a 6.4-inch 120Hz fluid AMOLED display. It's going to be a Full HD Plus resolution of 1440 by 3140, and it will of course have an in-display fingerprint scanner. A new report claims the selfie camera in the standard OnePlus 8 is going to be a 32-megapixel Sony IMX616. As you can see, they've gone with a triple camera setup on the rear of the OnePlus 8 and they've stuck with the vertical alignment we're used to seeing. The OnePlus 8 is going to come with a 64-megapixel Sony IMX686 with an aperture of f1.6 and this will of course be the primary sensor. We get a 12-megapixel ultra-wide with an aperture of f2.2 and finally a 12-megapixel telephoto with an aperture of f2.4 and 5x hybrid zoom. The OnePlus 8 again has the power button and the alert slider on the right with the volume rocker on the left and the SIM tray can be found at the bottom. The device is going to be powered by the Snapdragon 865 and the X55 modem, meaning we get 5G support on the standard OnePlus 8. It should be coming with the choice of 8 or 12GB of RAM with 128 or 256 storage, which will again be UFS 3. It's going to be powered by a 4000 mAh battery with support for 30-watt fast charging, and the phone dimensions come in at 162.6 by 75.9 by 8.8mm, and we again get stereo speakers on the OnePlus 8. The price of the OnePlus 8 with 8GB of RAM and 128 storage is expected to be $528. For 8GB of RAM with 256 storage, we're expecting $571, and for 12GB of RAM with 256 storage, we're expecting $614. Finally, we've got the more premium model, the OnePlus 8 Pro. On the front, we've got the same all-screen curved display, and while earlier leaks believed the OnePlus 8 Pro was going to have a dual punch hole camera in the top left, we now believe it's only going to be a single. The display is going to be a 6.7-inch 120Hz fluid AMOLED display. It's going to have a Full HD Plus resolution of 1440 by 3140 and it will of course have an in-display fingerprint scanner. The new report claims the selfie camera is going to be a 32-megapixel Sony IMX616, and while people were expecting a 3D time-of-flight camera, it's not going to be the case. The OnePlus 8 Pro is going to be the first from OnePlus to feature a quad camera setup on the rear. It's going to come with a 64-megapixel Sony IMX686 with an aperture of f1.6 as the primary sensor. We get a 20-megapixel ultra-wide with an aperture of f2.2, a 12-megapixel telephoto with an aperture of f2.4 and 10x hybrid zoom, and finally a 3D time-of-flight depth sensor. The device is again going to be powered by the Snapdragon 865 along with the X55 modem, meaning we do get 5G support. It's going to be coming with the choice of 8 or 12GB of RAM and 128 or 256 storage. Again, this is UFS 3. We've got the power button and alert slider on the right with the volume rocker on the left. Battery capacity is reportedly 4500 mAh, and of course it will support 35-watt fast charging. Again, we get stereo speakers on the OnePlus 8 Pro, and it's going to measure in at 165.3 by 74 by 8.8mm, so the same thickness as the predecessor. This could mean we again don't get wireless charging, but at this point we still don't know. OnePlus have always stayed away from wireless charging, although it does seem to be a common request from consumers. Another complaint is of course IP ratings. Now OnePlus always make their phones water resistant, and they do normally demonstrate this to us, but they never give us official IP ratings to keep the cost down. And one thing we have to remember as consumers, even if we do have an official IP rating, we're still not covered under water damage. The OnePlus 8 Pro is going to come with the same RAM and storage configurations as the standard OnePlus 8, so we'll get 8GB of RAM with 128 storage for $714. We get 8GB of RAM with 256 storage for $786, and finally we get 12GB of RAM with 256 storage for $858. Of course, all three phones are going to ship with Android 10 in the form of Oxygen OS, and it's great that we pretty much know everything about the OnePlus 8 range. Hopefully this will help you guys decide on what phone to buy next, but I'm still hoping we also have some surprises in store at launch. As always though, I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments. Who out there is waiting for the OnePlus 8? And are you waiting for the OnePlus 8 Lite, the OnePlus 8 or the OnePlus 8 Pro? But thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, smash a thumbs up. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down twice, and I'll see you guys in the next one.